Warren Brooks, Interim COO, Transition Operations, Titan Solutions. I slid that business card across the mahogany table like I was dealing the winning hand in a poker game I'd been playing for 12 years. The kid's face went white as copy paper. 20 minutes earlier, Braden Palmer had fired me in front of 6 executives from our buyer. Now he was staring at my new title like someone had just told him the Easter Bunny was real and royally pissed off. But let me back up and tell you how a 48-year-old Navy vet ended up schooling a trust fund baby in corporate warfare. The name's Warren Brooks. Friends call me War. Picked that up during my Navy Reserve days, back when I thought hard work and showing up on time actually mattered in business. Turns out it does matter, just not the way I thought it would. I've been at Apex Dynamics for 12 years. Started as operations manager when we had 20 people working out of a strip mall office. Built every system that made this company worth $600 million to Titan Solutions. Every vendor contract, every compliance protocol, every backup plan that kept us alive when things went sideways. Then our CEO decided to retire. No warning, no transition plan. Just a goodbye email on Friday and an empty corner office on Monday. That's when Braden showed up. Kid's 25 years old. CEO's nephew. Has an MBA from some party school and exactly 0 days of real-world experience. First thing he did was print himself a laminated badge and grab a coffee mug that said "World's Okayest Leader." I should have known right then we were screwed. Braden called an all-hands meeting his first day. Walked in wearing a blazer that cost more than my mortgage payment and opened with this gem. "We're going to disrupt some paradigms, people." I looked around the room. Our head of finance was 43 years old, with 2 kids in college. Our operations director had been running warehouses since before Braden learned to drive. These weren't people who needed their paradigms disrupted. They needed steady leadership and clear direction. But Braden had other ideas. See, there's a difference between leading and performing. I learned that in the Navy. Real leadership happens in the details nobody wants to handle. The vendor contracts that keep your supply chain running. The compliance reports that keep federal regulators from shutting you down. The backup systems that save your company when everything breaks at once. Braden's version of leadership was PowerPoint slides and buzzwords. Within a week, 3 department heads were calling me directly. Not Braden, me. Legal couldn't finalize our biggest contract because Braden claimed he had master access to our signature authority. Turns out he thought that was just a feeling, not an actual system permission. Finance couldn't get budget approvals because the kid kept replying "circle back" to every email like it was some magic spell that made problems disappear. Procurement was stuck because Braden had streamlined our vendor approval process by removing the steps that actually verified companies weren't scams. Me, I kept the lights on, made the calls, fixed the problems, worked weekends to clean up the messes he created during the week. Look, I'm 48 years old. My kid's a junior in college. That's $30,000 a year I can't just stop paying. My wife Sarah has been patient with the long hours for 12 years because she knew I was building something real, something that would set us up for the future. I wasn't about to let some kid with a business degree flush that down the toilet. But I was tired, dead tired, not just from the work. From watching 12 years of careful planning get torn apart by someone who thought innovation meant ignoring everything that came before him. That warehouse logistics system that saved us during Hurricane Isabel? I built that. The vendor relationships that got us preferred pricing when supply chains broke during COVID? Those were mine. The disaster recovery plan that kept us running when our main server died? I wrote that on a Sunday afternoon, while Braden was probably posting motivational quotes on social media. So when Diana Kruger from Titan Solutions reached out asking if we had any continuity frameworks to help with the acquisition, I didn't hesitate. I didn't give her corporate speak. I gave her the truth. One document, password protected, showing exactly how Apex actually worked. Not how Braden said it worked. How it really worked. The systems that mattered. The people who knew what they were doing. The vendor relationships that kept us profitable. The compliance protocols that kept us legal. I wasn't trying to save my job. I'd already started updating my resume. But I wasn't going to let 12 years of work get destroyed by incompetence either. Diana responded within an hour, "This is incredibly helpful. Can I share this with Braden?" I wrote back, "Maybe hold off on that for now." That was the moment everything changed. Suddenly, I was getting copied on emails I wasn't supposed to see. Internal risk assessments from Titan's due diligence team. Integration timelines that mentioned my name specifically. HR forecasts that referenced key operational personnel retention. Then Diana sent me a direct message. "Warren, what's your assessment of the vendor integration timeline under the current leadership structure?" Not ask Braden what he thinks. She asked me directly. Then came the legal document. Sent to my personal email at 11 p.m. on a Wednesday. No subject line, just a file called Apex Transition Staffing, internal draft. I expected the usual corporate word salad. Instead, I found something interesting. Under Key Personnel, Transition Phase, there was a line item for Continuity Lead. The name field was blank, like a job posting nobody had filled yet. I saved that email in a folder I called Insurance Policy, because sometimes corporate wars aren't won in boardrooms. They're won in footnotes and organizational charts that nobody reads until it's too late. Meanwhile, Braden was busy playing CEO. He brought in his college buddy Colton Reed as Director of Strategic Innovation. That's not a real job title. That's what you call someone when you want to pay your friend but can't think of actual work for him to do. Colton showed up with a standing desk, a ring light for video calls, and a whiteboard covered in words like disruptive and scalable. He'd never worked anywhere else. His entire business experience was helping Braden run their fraternity's mixer budget. Within days, everything started falling apart. Our vendor payment system crashed because Colton optimized the approval workflow. He removed 2 verification steps that existed because of federal compliance requirements, not because they were inefficient, because they were legally required. One of our biggest suppliers drove to our office and threatened to repossess equipment. They'd been waiting 3 weeks for a payment that was stuck in Colton's improved system. I found Braden in the break room laughing with Colton over protein bars while our entire supply chain was about to collapse. "We've got a serious problem with vendor payments," I told him. He held up his hand like a traffic cop. "Warren, maybe if you focused less on problems and more on solutions, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Your operations. Let strategy handle the big picture. Just operations. Never mind that I was the one who negotiated the contracts that kept our costs down. Never mind that I'd already handled 5 emergency vendor calls that morning while Colton was taking selfies with his whiteboard. That's when I stopped talking in meetings, mostly because I wasn't invited anymore. Braden had decided I was resistant to change and started excluding me from strategic discussions. I stopped offering solutions, stopped volunteering to fix problems before they became disasters. I just watched, documented everything, and quietly started preparing for what I knew was coming. Because fools trip over themselves eventually. But this fool was taking my company down with him. 3 weeks after Braden took over, our biggest logistics partnership fell apart. Colton missed a renewal deadline. Not by a few days, by 3 weeks. The contract that kept our entire East Coast distribution running just expired because he thought auto-renewal meant it happened automatically without any paperwork. Our logistics partner gave us 48 hours to fix it, or they'd start moving our contract to the bottom of their priority list. In supply chain terms, that's like being told your house is about to burn down and you have 2 days to find a fire department. Titan's legal team flagged it immediately. They weren't idiots. They could see our operational foundation cracking in real time. Our finance director called me in a panic. "Warren, do we have any backup logistics contacts?" Of course I did. I'd built a backup vendor list back in March, knowing we'd need it if this circus kept going. I handed it over quietly. Didn't CC Braden. Didn't make a big announcement. Just gave her what she needed to keep the company from imploding. But Titan noticed. That's when Diana reached out personally, not through official channels. Just a direct message, "You okay over there?" Just checking in. 7 words that changed everything. Because if Diana was reaching out personally, that meant my silence was getting louder than Braden's noise. That meant I still had leverage I didn't even know I had. I wrote back, "Yeah, but you might want to look at page 14, paragraph 3E in that staffing agreement." I didn't explain what it said. Didn't need to. Because paragraph 3E was the part nobody reads. The legal fine print that gets buried in 70 pages of acquisition paperwork. The part that said any staffing decisions related to operational personnel had to be approved by something called a continuity lead. And that position was still vacant. The first unofficial briefing happened by accident. Or at least that's what I told myself. We were supposed to be reviewing asset inventories with Titan's integration team. Standard due diligence stuff. But Braden had what he called delegate fatigue. So he forwarded the meeting invite to me without reading the agenda. Pierce Donnelly, one of Titan's senior guys, asked about our vendor performance metrics for the past 3 years. Pretty basic question for anyone who'd actually been running operations. Braden stared at him like he'd been asked to explain quantum physics in French. I waited a beat, then said, "You'll find those in tab 2 of the operations dashboard. Lines 42 through 68 include recovery data for late cycle issues." Dead silence for about 5 seconds. Then Pierce said, "Perfect. Thanks, Warren." After the call, I got a message from Titan's integration office. "Would you have time for a quick call about operational continuity?" I thought about it for exactly 30 seconds. I wasn't going to blow up NDAS or burn bridges just to play office politics. But I also wasn't going to sit there and watch 12 years of work get destroyed by incompetence. One call, 15 minutes, off the official calendar. That first call turned into 3 more by the end of the week. I didn't editorialize, didn't badmouth Braden or Colton, just answered what they asked. Do you have post-acquisition risk assessments? Yes, I built them in Q2. Any concerns about the compliance software migration? Yes. Here's the audit trail showing what could break. Any indication current leadership isn't aligned on Q4 deliverables? I attached 2 different strategy documents, one from our finance team, one from Braden's fever dreams. I never said I told you so. The documentation spoke for itself. By the 3rd call, the tone changed completely. Pierce brought Diana. Diana brought another executive. Then their legal counsel joined. They stopped calling it a chat, started calling it a transition review. That's when Diana asked the question that changed my life. Warren, if there were an ideal role for you post-acquisition to maintain operational continuity, what would that look like? I didn't hesitate. Interim COO for transition operations. Not permanent, not glamorous. Just honest. I didn't want a corner office or a fancy title. I wanted control over the bridge until we got through the storm. Diana nodded and typed something I couldn't see. 2 days later, a Titan lawyer sent me a document labeled Transition Staffing Notes, Internal Review Only. I read it twice, then a 3rd time. My name was there, in the continuity lead slot, with a checkbox next to it. Checked. Meanwhile, Braden was hosting Innovation Fridays with beanbag chairs and kombucha. He asked the finance team why cash flow couldn't just mean selling more stuff. He suggested we disrupt our compliance protocols because they were slowing down our velocity. He had no clue about the calls, no idea about the documents, no clue that the acquisition agreement he'd signed in blind faith was about to eat his entire career. The breaking point came on a Tuesday morning. Braden posted a company-wide message on Slack, "Huge win. We've migrated all compliance workflows to a new cloud-based solution. Faster, cheaper, better." I read it 3 times just to make sure he'd actually written migrated all compliance workflows about systems that handled legal documents for a $600 million acquisition. My phone started ringing within an hour. Legal couldn't access contract databases. Vendor management was locked out of approval workflows. Procurement was stuck talking to a chatbot that answered every question with, "I'm still learning." 5 critical suppliers were frozen in the new system. No tax documentation, no background checks, no payment authorization. One of them threatened to involve their legal team if the issue wasn't resolved by end of business. I found Braden in the break room hosting something called Transformation Tuesday. He was drinking cucumber water and drawing flow charts on butcher paper while the company burned down around him. "We've got a serious problem," I told him. "The compliance migration broke everything." He looked up from his flow chart and grinned like someone who'd just parallel parked a school bus. "Minor hiccup, Warren. Growing pains. The sales rep said their AI platform scales with organizational needs. Their AI doesn't file SEC reports, Braden." He blinked like I'd just made up the term SEC on the spot. Diana from Titan was on an emergency call within 2 hours. She didn't yell, didn't even sound annoyed, just asked one simple question: who authorized the system migration? Braden opened his mouth to answer, but I held up my hand. "I'll send you a complete breakdown. Decision logs, approval chains, timeline documentation. I had everything. Screenshots of Slack conversations where Braden told Colton to just rip the Band-Aid off. Email threads where department heads asked for more time to review the migration plan. Meeting notes where I'd specifically warned about compliance risks. I sent it all to Diana in one clean package. Time-stamped, documented. Objective." Then Braden tried to spin it. He told Titan's team that I'd been resistant to innovation, that I'd created gaps in the legacy system, that he was future-proofing operations and I just couldn't adapt to modern business practices. What he didn't know was that I documented those conversations too. When Diana got my second email package, she replied with one word: received. 2 days of radio silence. Then something interesting happened. I wasn't officially invited to Titan's internal integration planning meeting, but when the meeting notes got distributed, my name was all over them. Vendor impact assessment. Warren B. to provide timeline. System restoration roadmap. Warren B. leading analysis. Compliance review. Reference Warren's audit documentation. Braden wasn't mentioned once. That's when I realized this wasn't about cleaning up his messes anymore. He wasn't just incompetent. He was a liability, a genuine threat to the deal that I'd spent 12 years building. So I stopped trying to work with him. Stopped explaining why his ideas wouldn't work. Stopped warning him about obvious problems. I just started preparing for the endgame. The contract sat in my personal email for 2 weeks. Subject line: Apex Dynamics Transition Staffing Agreement, Final Draft. I didn't open it right away. Not because I was scared of what was in it, because I already knew what wasn't in it. Braden never mentioned getting this document. Probably assumed it was just legal paperwork that lawyers would handle. He didn't understand that the most dangerous words in corporate America aren't shouted in boardrooms. They're buried in paragraph 3E of page 14 where nobody bothers to read. The morning I finally opened it, another vendor had just escalated a payment freeze to their legal team. Colton had sent out a company-wide email blaming legacy workflow baggage for our operational issues. And Braden was in his office practicing a presentation about synergistic value creation. I sat down with a cup of coffee that tasted like burnt rubber and clicked the file open. 73 pages of legal language, charts compliance checklists, signature lines, standard acquisition paperwork. I skipped through most of it until I hit what I was looking for. Page 14, paragraph 3E. All staffing decisions related to transition phase operational personnel must receive final approval from the designated continuity lead, whose authority may not be overridden by temporary or interim executives not ratified by the acquiring company's board of directors. One more line: continuity lead, Warren Brooks. I stared at my name, just sitting there in black and white like it had always belonged there. They'd buried a nuclear weapon in the contract. Braden had signed it thinking it was a formality. He'd authorized a document that handed me more operational authority than he had. The buyers had done it deliberately, quietly, legally. I hadn't even asked for it. I forwarded the file to my personal email with the subject line "Game Over" and walked past Braden's office. He was in there watching TikTok videos about leadership while eating a salad that probably cost more than my lunch budget for the week. He didn't look up. I kept walking because I knew something he didn't. He thought he was running the transition. But I was the transition. The morning before our final acquisition meeting, Braden sent another company-wide email. Subject: The future starts tomorrow. Apex joins Titan. 5 paragraphs about transformational synergies and next-level operational excellence. He thanked everyone for their resilience and adaptability during this exciting journey. I read the word operational excellence and almost laughed out loud. This was a guy who'd asked me last week if gross margin meant we were being rude to customers. That evening, I got a message I wasn't expecting. Short, direct, from Graham Sutton himself. Titan's CEO. Bring your business cards tomorrow. 5 words that hit me like a gut punch. Because Graham Sutton didn't waste time on small talk. If he was telling me to bring cards, that meant he already knew how tomorrow was going to end. I typed back, understood. Then I went home and told Sarah we might need to celebrate tomorrow night. I couldn't tell her why yet. But after 12 years of missed dinners and weekend work calls, I thought she deserved a heads up that things were about to change. The final meeting was set for 10 a.m. in the main conference room. Pure corporate theater. Mahogany table that probably cost more than my car. Leather chairs that squeaked when you moved. Windows overlooking the parking lot where I'd been arriving at 7 a.m. for 12 years. Titan's entire team was there. Graham Sutton at the head of the table, looking like someone who'd seen every corporate power play ever invented. Diana and Pierce flanking him like lieutenants, their legal counsel with a folder thick enough to stop a bullet. On our side, Braden, Colton, our HR director, and me, sitting in the back corner like furniture. Braden had dressed for the occasion. New suit, fresh haircut, cologne that you could smell from across the room. He'd even brought a PowerPoint presentation loaded on his laptop. The first slide said Apex 2. 0: streamlined, synchronized, superior. I wished I was making that up. Graham opened the meeting with exactly the kind of no-nonsense approach I expected. Let's review the transition timeline and key personnel assignments. Braden jumped in like he was hosting a game show. Absolutely, we're excited, we're aligned, and we're ready to hit the ground running. This acquisition represents the next evolution of Apex Dynamics. Leaner, smarter, more agile than ever. He clicked to his second slide. It was the organizational chart with his name at the top and everyone else reporting to him, including a box labeled outgoing personnel with my name in it. I want to personally thank everyone who helped us get to this point, he continued, including Warren Brooks, who will be transitioning out over the next 2 weeks to make room for our new operational structure. There it was, said like he was doing me a favor. Like I should stand up and thank him for the privilege of getting fired in front of 6 executives from our new parent company. Nobody moved, nobody spoke. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out one business card. Matte black cardstock. White ink, clean professional font. Warren Brooks. Interim COO. Transition Operations, Titan Solutions. I slid it across the table to Graham Sutton without saying a word. He picked it up. Read it. Then came a sound I'll never forget. Laughter, not mean laughter. Delighted laughter. Like someone had just been handed the punchline to a joke they'd been waiting months to hear. Braden's smile faltered. Something funny? Graham didn't answer. Just passed the card to Diana, who read it and grinned like Christmas morning. Then Pierce opened his folder. Slowly, deliberately. Flipped directly to a page marked with a yellow sticky tab. Page 14. You could hear Colton's chair squeak as he shifted uncomfortably. Our HR director suddenly became very interested in her coffee cup. Braden tried to regain control, voice a little too loud. I think there might be some confusion here. Warren doesn't represent Titan. He's just here for operational context during the transition. Diana spoke up. Calm as a surgeon. Actually, Mr. Palmer, Warren represents transition leadership for Apex's operational integration. That authority was established in the staffing agreement you signed 3 weeks ago. Braden's face went white. Number. There's no way that's legally binding. Graham slid the contract across the table. Page 14, paragraph 3E. Warren Brooks, designated continuity lead. Final authority over all staffing decisions related to operational personnel during the transition period. Braden stared at this document like it was written in a foreign language, which, in a way, it was. The foreign language of actually reading what you sign. This was never discussed. She was never supposed to. He caught himself. He was never supposed to have that kind of authority. Graham leaned back in his chair like someone settling in to watch a movie he'd been looking forward to. Your signature's right there on page 17, Mr. Palmer, right below the clause that gives Warren operational control for the next 90 days. The room went dead quiet. Braden's mouth opened and closed like a fish trying to figure out how to breathe air. His hands hovered over the table like he was trying to grab onto something that wasn't there. But wait, he reports to me. He's operations. I'm executive leadership. Graham smiled the way a chess master smiles when delivering checkmate. Not anymore. Graham cleared his throat and read directly from the contract. Slow and deliberate, like a judge delivering a verdict. All transition staffing and operational decisions fall under the final authority of the designated continuity lead, Warren Brooks. Any unilateral personnel changes by non-board approved interim executives are null and void. Braden didn't sit down, didn't storm out, just stood there like someone had unplugged him from the wall. Colton whispered something into his phone and quietly excused himself from the room. Smart move. Rats usually know when the ship's going down. Our HR director suddenly found the wood grain on the conference table absolutely fascinating. There has to be some mistake, Braden said finally. His voice cracked a little on the word mistake. This was never discussed. I didn't authorize Warren to have any kind of executive authority. Diana spoke up without looking at him. Your signature says otherwise, mister. Palmer, page 17, right next to Warren's appointment as continuity lead. Graham flipped the contract around so Braden could see his own signature. Black ink on white paper, right below the paragraph that had just ended his corporate career. Legal said it was standard transition paperwork. Boilerplate stuff. It was standard, Graham said. Standard for acquisitions where the interim leadership lacks operational experience. That hung in the air for about 10 seconds. The kind of silence that feels like everyone in the room is holding their breath. Braden tried one more time, but Warren reports to me. He's been reporting to me for 2 months. I'm the executive in charge of this transition. Graham didn't raise his voice, didn't even change his expression. Just leaned back in his chair like someone adjusting a chess piece. About that transition, Braden. We're making some adjustments to your role. Pierce pulled out another folder. This one was thin, like 1 page thin. Effective immediately, you'll be reassigned to facilities management at our Kansas City location. Night shift, warehouse operations. They could use someone to help coordinate forklift schedules and loading dock rotations. The room went dead quiet. You could hear the air conditioning humming in the walls. Braden's mouth opened and closed a few times. No sound came out. Kansas City? He finally managed. Great logistics hub, Graham said pleasantly. Lots of opportunity to learn ground-level operations. Character building work. Night shift, 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. Thursday through Monday. Kansas City gets cold in the winter, so you'll want to dress appropriately. I watched Braden's face go through about 5 different expressions. Confusion, disbelief, panic, anger. Then back to confusion. You can't be serious. Diana slid a single sheet of paper across the table. Your new assignment letter. Same pay grade, different responsibilities. Titan values operational experience at every level. Same pay grade. That was the knife twist. They weren't firing him. They were giving him exactly what he'd given me. A new job, whether he wanted it or not. Braden picked up the paper like it might bite him. Read it twice. His hands were shaking a little. You can't just reassign me to manual labor. I have an MBA. I've been running this company for 2 months. Graham's expression didn't change. And Warren's been building it for 12 years. We prefer experience over credentials. I didn't say anything. Didn't gloat, didn't smile. Just sat there and watched 12 years of work get validated by the people who'd actually been paying attention. Pierce handed me an envelope. Thick cardstock. Titan letterhead. Inside, my official appointment letter. Interim COO, transition operations. 90-day term with possibility of extension. Salary bump that would cover my kids' college tuition without me having to work weekends for the next 2 years. And a Titan ID badge. Warren Brooks, interim COO. I clipped it to my jacket. The plastic made a soft clicking sound that somehow echoed louder than anything else that had happened in that room. Thank you, I said. First words I'd spoken since sliding my business card across the table. Looking forward to getting started? I stood up and shook hands with Graham, Diana, and Pierce. Professional, courteous, like this was just another day at the office, which I guess it was. Behind me I heard Braden's voice one more time, soft and broken. Warren, wait, you knew about this the whole time, didn't you? I turned around. Kid was still standing there holding his reassignment letter like a court summons. I knew you were in over your head, I said. I tried to help. You told me to stay in my lane, but you planned this. You set me up. I thought about that for a second. No, Braden, I just did my job. You signed a contract without reading it. I read everything. That's the difference between us. He looked like he wanted to say something else. Maybe ask how I'd managed to outmaneuver him so completely. Maybe apologize for 2 months of treating me like obsolete equipment. Instead, he just stood there while everyone else filed out of the room. I was almost to the door when I heard him one last time. Kansas City? I didn't turn around. They have good barbecue. And that was it. 12 years of building something real. 2 months of watching someone try to tear it down. And one business card that changed everything. I walked back to my desk, my old desk, and started making a list of everything that needed to be fixed before the integration went live. Vendor relationships to rebuild. Compliance systems to restore. Operational procedures to document for the new team. Real work. The kind of work that keeps companies running and people employed and supply chains moving. The kind of work I'd been doing all along. 3 hours later, Sarah called to ask how the meeting went. Good, I told her. Really good. How does dinner at that steakhouse sound tonight? Can we afford it? Yeah, I said, looking at my new Titan badge. We can afford it. That evening, while Sarah and I were sharing a bottle of wine that didn't come from the discount rack, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Braden. I start in Kansas City next week. I wanted to say, I think I understand now. What you were trying to tell me. I showed the message to Sarah. She read it and looked at me. You going to respond? I thought about it. Kid was 25 years old. He'd just learned the hardest lesson in business. Authority without competence is just noise. I typed back, good luck. Keep your head down and learn the operations. You might surprise yourself. He wrote back immediately. Thanks. And that was the last I heard from Braden Palmer. 6 months later, I got a call from Diana. Titan wanted to make my interim position permanent. Full COO role, stock options. The works. I said yes. Sometimes the system works. Sometimes experience beats connections and competence trumps politics. Sometimes the guy who actually knows how to run the machine gets to run the machine. The Navy taught me that real victories aren't about glory. They're about completing the mission. And my mission was keeping the lights on while everyone else figured out who was really in charge. Turns out it was me all along. I just had to wait for everyone else to figure it out.